Alright, let's talk about weaving. So we've got a couple different board options. Each will make about the same size weaving as how big they are. And then the other thing that affects the size of your weaving is how many notches you actually use. So I'll show you what I mean by that in a second. You're going to want 11 yards, which you measure by measuring from your fingertips, pulling it out to your nose, and that's 1, and then you grab it. So I would measure this along my whole arm to my nose, and then grab here, pull more from the box until you get your 11 yards to start to do the warp. So you want to stick your strings in. You want to stick the end of one string through your first notch. Tape it down if you have tape available. This was the back side. And then you're going to go straight down to the opposite and slide it into that notch. These are pretty tight, so I probably won't need tape. You do need tape if you go like this, and you can pull it out pretty easily from where you stuck it in though. Alright, and then I'm going to wrap it around the back, and I'm not trying to weave that much. This would be pretty intense if I did every single one of these notches. It would be much more challenging. So feel free to do that if you want to challenge yourself, but I'm going to skip every other notch. So I went through this one, I'm going to the other side, and I'm going to skip a notch, put it here. Flip it over and keep wrapping it around, wrapping and turning and sticking it in the right notch as you go. Now, however many you go down, this is how wide your weaving is going to be. If you want it to be as wide as your board, you're obviously going to need to wrap the strings all the way to the end. But I'd like a kind of a narrow one this time, so I'm going to leave it here. Just make sure that you end on the same side that you started on, and you tape your ends down if you need to. Cut off the extra string, and then you're ready to start on the front side. So I'm on the front, and I'm going to start at the top left corner. I'm going to put my string underneath and wrap it around, and I need to tie a knot. If you don't know how to tie a knot, you make an X, you put one string under, make sure it's still together, and pull tight. You want to do double knots, maybe even triple knots, to make sure everything is super secure throughout your weaving. Now that my one end is secure, I'm going to go find my other end and weave with this end. So since this knot is right here, we're going to call this over. So then the next string needs to be under. And that's it. Over, under, over, under. That's basically the whole thing. So over, under, over. I just leave it since it's already on top. Under, over, under, over. Then you want to pull, when you get to the end, you pull it all the way through. Make sure you don't pull too much. You don't want to see this going in at all. You want to keep these strings parallel to each other. Find the weaving end again. Last time we went over, so this time we need to do the opposite. We need to go under. Okay? If I were to go over again, I would just be undoing everything I already did. Alright, so I'm going to go over, under, and it's going to be the opposite of what I did in the last line. And I like to scoot it up and pull it through. Make sure that when the end comes up, you pull slowly so that once it touches, you can stop pulling. Because if you pull this too tight, and you even make the string go in a little bit at a time, the whole thing's going to collapse into an hourglass shape, which we don't want, because it'll be impossible to weave if all of these are scrunched together. I went under last time, so I would start over, under, over, under, over, under, over, back and forth. Make sure you're not letting your weaving get all spread out like this. You want to keep each string area pushed up, because if you let it have too much slack, you'll end up pushing it up and you'll have all this extra space here. So make sure you're pulling it just until it touches and making sure it's scooted up each time you finish a new row. Push it, pull it over, just gentle enough. If I pull this a little too tight, see how it goes in? We don't want that at all. Make sure you keep it super loose. Too loose is way better than too tight. If you run out of your color and you need more, just add on the same color. If you decide that you're sick of the color or you've had enough of it or ready to switch on to the new color, you are going to tie on the next string, preferably close to the base so that you start right away with that new color. If you tie it down here, you're going to have a little bit more purple to go until you get to the other side. So I'll show you how this kind of works, because that part's a little confusing, but wherever you tie it, you're just going to keep weaving as normal, and eventually it changes into your new color. So tying two strings together, make an X, put one color underneath the X and back to the top so they meet again. And then you need to do the same thing again. You're going to make another circle with an X at the top, bring the end under over to tie the knot, and pull tight. Now, with scissors, you can cut off the excess string. But make sure you leave enough so that in case your knot comes untied, you can give it another little tie later on. And at the very end, we'll deal with all the little loose pieces that stick out. Okay, so now you find the end, the weaving end, and you do the exact same thing, just like you were before. I left off on under, so I need to start by going over. Under, over, under, over. Pulling it through. Watch out for knots that get stuck. Ignore the little flappy guys. And now you'll see it turn to blue. Okay, and then you keep weaving just like that. Make sure you have some type of pattern or color plan ready to go so you know what to do, what colors go where, and you should do great.